Welcome to Endo Battery, where we are sharing our endometriosis journey and learning along the way. This podcast is in no way meant to diagnose or give medical advice, but a place where you can gain knowledge and information that can help you to not feel alone as well as become your best advocate. We want to learn with you and support you wherever you are in your journey.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Shelby.
And I'm Alana, and we're Endo Battery.
Charging our life when endo drains us. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Endo Battery. Today, we're so excited. We have Chelsea Taylor here chatting with us about a few things. And so thank you so much for jumping on and chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be working with you guys on this. So thank you for having me as your guest today.
Absolutely.
And Chelsea is in our support group with us, and we've gotten to know her over time. And her story we felt like would be really beneficial for a lot of people because it's different than ours. Everyone's is different, but also because hers is a slight bit more complex. And I think that she has a lot of value to add to those who have taken years with multiple symptoms and multiple things to have their diagnosis finally figured out. So Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so I have kind of a very typical endo story. It's very similar to what a lot of people go through, a severe delay in diagnosis. So I started having symptoms when I was about 13 years old with my first period. From there, just cramps, heavy bleeding. I was always kind of told it was normal. I know my mom had really bad periods. My grandma had bad periods. So it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I guess this is just what I get to deal with. And so I dealt with it for a long time. I was that teenager that had like Advil hidden in my backpack at school, like always afraid I was going to get arrested for having like drugs on campus, but I couldn't survive the day without it.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to take multiple Advil through the day and, heating pads and things. And it was terrible. So I finally went to the doctor when I was 16 to talk to him about it and was placed on birth control. At that point, my mom didn't know I went. So it was kind of a sneaky thing because she was not excited about me doing anything like that. I found out later it was because I have a genetic clotting disorder, which made birth control extremely risky. So her years of saying not to be on it were definitely right because I definitely shouldn't have been on it. But I did make the attempt and see if it would be something that would help me. And it didn't.
And lesson learned, we should always listen to our mothers.
We really should listen to our mothers. That was one of those where I'm like, I really should have listened to you. And I'm really glad I didn't end up with a blood clot. So thank you.
So she does have that disorder as well?
She does, yeah. So she's had multiple clots and DVT. And so she's, she had a pulmonary embolism. So and hers all started from birth control when she was younger. So, so it was one of those things. I ended up coming off of it as soon as she found out that I was on it. She's like, no, you do not get to take this anymore. Scared me, into not doing it, which was great and definitely the right thing. So I just kind of suffered through at that point. Just constant, heavy, miserable bleeding. I had horrible cramps. I would get pain down both my legs, pain in my back. I'd have headaches, a lot of nausea with my symptoms, which I don't know really where that came from, but I was nauseous most of my life. And it got a lot worse as I got older. But yeah, I've always kind of had that underlying just not feeling great. So I went through all that. And for years, I was just told that this was normal. This is what people deal with. Like, take some Advil. You take 2 Advil, take 3 Advil. You should be taking 4 now. And I'm taking 4 Advil at a time for a long time.
Right.
So I just kind of suffered through. So I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 21. She was my favorite little surprise. So blessed to have her. And pregnancy was great. Like, I was the happiest I think I've ever been. I had some trying circumstances, with the relationship and stuff. But I was so happy because I felt great. I felt like I had my body back. I was so happy to not be bleeding through my clothes all the time and miserable and crampy. And it was great. So made it through that whole pregnancy. I was sad when it was over because I could have been pregnant forever.
And isn't it weird how that was the same way for both of my pregnancies?
Yeah.
That you never realize. Usually pregnancy is such a hard and trying time for people.
Right.
They're losing their body and all those things. Yet us some of us who deal with endometriosis, it's like the time of our life, even though we're growing a human and all the things, but you feel just 1,000 times better.
Yeah. I know everybo's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're so pregnant. I'm like, no, I feel awesome.
See, I did not have that experience. So for me, it was like, I had endo pain still in like the nerves and stuff. And so then on top of it was just, I didn't have that experience, but I'm glad you did because
it was,
you needed
dream.
that.
Yes. And I did need it. I was young and I was kind of in over my head and not sure what I was getting into becoming a mom at that age. But it was great. And, I had a very easy childbirth with her. Everything was wonderful. I breastfed for a while until I ended up with a kidney infection and ended up being put on antibiotics. And they told me I had to stop being on these antibiotics. Found out later I didn't necessarily have to, but as soon as I stopped, everything came back. And it was just a nightmare. It was worse than it was before. And I found it much more difficult to manage. Like before I had my daughter, I was able to manage. I was able to work, do stuff I needed to do. I missed school here and there. I missed, had to call in here and there to work, but it wasn't... It didn't control much of my life. And then after she was born, it started controlling my life, which is so unfortunate because it's like, that's the time where I needed to be on my A game.
Right.
Like I'm like, I got a baby. Like I'm in charge of another human.
Right.
And I feel terrible. And I like don't want to get out of bed. And I can't move for 3 or 4 days out of the month because everything hurts. And so it was hard getting back to it. And so I went back to my doctor, talked to them about options. And because I refused birth control, they basically blew me off. And they were like, well, this is the only thing that we're willing to do. It's like, okay. So I suffered through. I did go through a point where it got so bad again that I was like, I'm willing to risk blood clots to feel better. So I did go through and I did 3 months of the depot shot and came off it because it made me feel significantly worse. And then I tried a Mirena IUD as well. And also terrible experience. So, I just, anytime I've tried anything like that, it's always made things worse for me. I know there are a lot of women out there that get some benefit from those medications, but for me, it was much, much worse. So, but because that was kind of what I was always offered, I couldn't really do anything about it. So I fast forward a few years, I was married, I had my son. And my pregnancy was a little bit harder with him, but I did gain a lot of weight. So I think that probably had a little bit more to do with how I felt. But I still was just so happy to not bleed every month and not be cramping and dealing with all of that. I mean, it was still just wonderful. Even with all the back pain and the other stuff, I was like, no, I'll take this over that. So I made it through all that. And then again, as soon as I stopped breastfeeding, even probably just a little bit before with him, I started feeling terrible again. And it was so much worse. Like each time it just got worse and worse and worse. Because
what happened with me is when I was breastfeeding, my period actually came back a lot faster than most. Like postpartum, first baby was 10 weeks, second baby was 8 weeks. Exclusively breastfeeding. And then my supply dipped.
Interesting.
And my doctor at the time said, well, all the hormones and everything will do that because it's telling your body that you're done or whatever the case may be. And she's like, but, who knows? Well, it sucks. So thanks for that.
And they never really know. And that's so hard to deal with where it's like, why is it? Why is it doing this? Because I made it through, and I'd say my period started probably, again, maybe a month or two before I stopped breastfeeding. I'd spot a little bit, but I didn't get to breastfeed him for very long. So, it's a whole different story. So once, I started my cycles again after he was born, it was like World War III in my uterus. Like I just can't even tell you how bad the pain was. So it started out with, just the normal cramps and the heavy bleeding and back pain and stuff. And then I started getting having all these other really weird issues. Like I developed random shoulder pain in my right shoulder. I had severe left hip pain to the point where before I got diagnosed, I walked with a limp because I couldn't move my legs sometimes because it hurt so bad. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm 35 years old. And I probably should be using a cane, but I'm way too proud to do that. No offense to anybody who does, but I just was like, I can't. Like, no, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody says I'm fine, so why would I need this cane? It's obviously, just in my head or whatever. So,
Right.
So these other symptoms, started creeping in. I started having a lot of bladder issues. Things like I felt like I had a UTI is what it felt like. And so I'd go to the doctor. Like, hey, I think I might have a UTI. And so we'd go through, do the urine test. They'd dip it. It'd come back, oh, there's nothing, but we'll send it for cultures. We'll start you on macrobid or some other antibiotic for now. And we'll let you know when the culture comes back. And then they'd call me, a day or two later and be like, yeah, nothing grew. And they're like, so you don't need to keep taking that. And I'm like, well, why does it hurt?
Right.
Well, we don't really know. So I went through that for years.
How long was that?
So let's say 2010, probably close to 10 years off and on.
Really?
Yeah. So, because it started a couple years after Jackson was born. So yeah, I went through all that. I bet you I probably went to the doctor over 30 times for UTI symptoms. And I was sure. I mean, like, I had every single symptom that showed a UTI, everything that you would expect, like urgency
Classic
and
signs of
frequency.
it.
And
Yeah.
then oh my gosh, everything hurts all the time. And I just peed and I have to pee again 8 seconds later. It was terrible. But they could never figure out what was wrong. So then I started developing GI issues. And so I went and saw a GI doctor after fighting to get a referral and jumping through a million hoops, went and saw them. And they basically were like, we think you probably have IBS. It's like, okay, well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Like, my bowels are definitely a little irritated, probably, and they seem a little grouchy, so maybe that is what this is.
Yeah.
They didn't really offer me much for treatment for it. I was kind of like, here's some peppermint oil pills that you can take that might help, and it might make you feel better, and I had a lot of nausea at the time, too. And I mean, I just had all these weird GI issues going on. So went and saw a neurologist because of my headaches. I mean, and I feel like I just went in like these giant circles between specialists. I go to my OBGYN and talk to them and say, hey, like, I'm still bleeding to death every month. I can't leave the house. I have to carry extra clothes in my car with me. I'm bleeding through tampons and pads. I'm going through, and they're like, no. You want birth control? Right. No. Well, we don't know what to do. You're just going to have to bleed to death.
You're like, or support the whole, feminine product industry because that's what you do.
Right. Yeah. No, I probably should have bought stock in Tampax because I have spent a small fortune.
Yeah. Right.
Over the years on stuff like that. So, then I'd talk to them about it. They'd say there's nothing they can do. I'd mention my GI issues and I'd be like, well, let's send you to a GI doc. So I go see the GI doc and they're like, oh, we don't really know what's going on. And so then I go back and be like, well, I still have these urinary issues too. So then they send me to a urologist. And the same thing. We don't really know what this is. We have no idea. And then I go back. Okay, well, I'm still having headaches. Send me to the neurologist. We don't really know. We can do an MRI, but we don't think it's going to help. And I was a broke single mom at this point. So they're like, well, it's like $2,800 for an MRI. I'm like, I can't afford that. And I don't think my headaches are coming from my head.
Right.
If that makes sense. So it was years of that. This all started right around when I was 25, and I finally got a solid diagnosis when I was 35. So I went in, I had CTs done, I had endoscopies, colonoscopies, also I had GI studies done, gallbladder test, HIDA scan for my gallbladder. I mean, I had all these things because I just had so much going on.
So you had every test that they could possibly order.
Everything.
That's what you got.
Ultrasounds. I can't even tell you how many transvaginal ultrasounds I had. Like,
and you get another one.
Right?
You get another one.
Right. And they're always so funny because they're like, okay, so I'm like, dude, I have done this so many times. I can do this. Like,
let me help you.
Here, I'll position it. I know exactly where you need to look because this is where it hurts. I mean, that's how I felt going in there. Like,
that's how I felt.
I feel like I could be an ultrasound tech at this point being in here. So, and they always came back with nothing. Maybe, you might have a small cyst here. It could be a luteal cyst. It could be this. And it's like, okay, well, we're just going to watch it and nothing. So I did this for years. On top of all of that too, I would say probably right around 2013-ish, I started getting pushed after I, kind of went through all these different specialists. I started getting pushed more towards the psychiatry side of things, where it was like, hey, like, you've had all these tests run, and they try to be so nice. Like, you've had all these tests run. We've done all this work. And everything is normal. So we think now it's probably time for you to go speak to a psychiatrist. And I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe you're right. Like, I just went through a divorce. Maybe I'm depressed. Maybe I am imagining all of this. Like, and I just don't realize it. So I went through that for years. I pursued that avenue and kind of gave up on the physical aspect of things for probably 5 years, and going in and out and on and off different psych meds. I was misdiagnosed at one point as bipolar, which was really interesting to me. But when I was talking to this psychiatrist about my symptoms and how I was feeling, I feel really good for 2 weeks. Back then, I would feel really good for 2 weeks. And then my period would hit, and I would be, or leading up to my period, and I would not be able to function for 2 weeks. And I was, I tried to explain, like, it feels very physical. It doesn't feel like it's in my brain. And they still, like, slapped that label on me and started putting me on all sorts of psych meds and cocktails of different things. And that made everything so much worse.
I was going to ask, how much did those affect all your symptoms?
Oh, it was I didn't feel a big difference in my physical symptoms from all of that. But at one point I was on 4 different psych meds.
Wow.
I'd go in and be like, I don't feel like the pill that you put me on is helping. I feel like I'm actually becoming more depressed being on this. I don't really feel depressed, but I'm starting to feel that way. Hey. And, they'd be like, well, we need to add this one in and bump your dose. So then they'd add one in, and then they bump my dose up, and then they'd add something in for sleep because I wouldn't be able to sleep because of things. And it just the side effects from it. And I'm a big believer in medications and things like that. And I do think that they serve a great purpose for people. And there are people out there who have great success with antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds.
Yeah.
But they're probably depressed.
Right.
And probably have anxiety. And I didn't have those issues. That really wasn't anything that I struggled with. I mean, and if I was depressed, it was because nobody listened to me. It wasn't, it's because I'm in there in the doctor's office every few months going, I feel like I'm dying. And nobody seems to care. And I'm starting to feel a little sad about that because,
Which I think on some level, every endo person that I've heard their story or spoken to and dealt with myself has dealt with the, mental health side of it at some point.
Yeah.
Because you get so gaslit that you get told no, and how can you have UTIs, or how can you have back pain, or how can you have pain with sex?
Right.
Like, nothing's physically wrong with you.
Right.
So it must all be in your head. Like, you need to go see a therapist.
Yeah.
And it's just, so then you question yourself.
Yeah.
Am I this or am I not?
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like that has been a very similar pattern that, a lot of endo warriors deal with.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think therapy and psychology is important, especially for those of us that have had a lot of trauma.
Yes.
But it's not the same kind of therapy as what's wrong with you. It's how can we walk you through this trauma?
Right.
How can we get you to a point where seeing something, hearing something, potentially even feeling something isn't going to set you back into a fit of my endo's back.
Right.
Or my, and yes, we have to be aware of that because it's always a possibility to continue having pain or whatnot and being aware of our bodies. But oftentimes I feel like we're missing that mark there.
Yeah.
Of we are misusing psychology.
Right.
Because people don't know what to do with us.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. It was like, oh, we don't know what to do with this girl. Send her to the psychiatrist.
Right.
They'll figure it out.
Just
or
put that
medicate her
label.
enough to
Yep.
where she won't be a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's very much exactly what it was like. So,
And it compounds it. It doesn't do anything. It compounds the
Right.
issue.
right. Yeah. Not only on top of all the endo symptoms that I was feeling and that were getting worse, like literally every month I was getting worse and worse and worse. But on top of that, then I started having severe mental health issues because I was on a lot of medications to try to fix some sort of brain chemistry imbalance that wasn't actually probably there.
Yeah.
And so
That's like giving chemo to an endo patient because you think they have cancer when they don't. It's
right. I mean, it really was kind of a scary time.
toxic.
It's one of those, like, I probably will never, ever, ever take a psych med again after that. Just because, I mean, I took all of them at that point.
Yeah.
I was on so many different ones, but I mean, I won't say never, but I'm very, very leery of it now just because they tried to put it on as a Band-Aid instead of looking to see why I was as miserable as I was, or even believing me.
Right.
You know, I mean, they didn't even really believe me. And I think that was the thing that was one of the hardest parts of all of this, was just feeling like nobody, like I couldn't even trust my own body and how I felt because they kept telling me I couldn't have felt that way.
Right. You were never heard.
Right. Yeah. Not until
they're telling you how to feel,
right doctor.
and not you telling them how you feel.
Right.
Like it's the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was tough. But so I went through all that. I mean, I did that for years and years and years. And it started getting to the point where I wasn't really able to work, at least not commit to like a real full-time job where you had to be there Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because I couldn't work the first day or two of my period usually. I mean, and if I did, I was like barely a human. I mean, I would crawl into my office and sit on the floor under my desk with a heating pad. And like, if somebody came in, then I'd crawl back into my chair, and it was terrible. And so once it started affecting that, I was like, I can't do this. This is crazy. There has to be something else. I came off all the psych meds. Thankfully, you know, my job at the time was great and I was able to kind of schedule stuff around. So I was really lucky to be in a flexible job where I could take those days off if I needed to most of the time. And so, but I know most women don't have that, you know, and I could never take time off of being a mom. Like that, that never went away. So,
I mean, we'd like to sometimes.
Right. Yeah. No, there's times where it's like, oh, I just need a vacation. But yeah, I could never, you know, so it just started impacting my life so much that like I really felt like I was like losing the battle with it.
And you still don't know what it was at this point.
I had no idea. Well, I actually, so I knew what it was when I was 25. I went into the doctor, my OBGYN at the time, and said, I am 99% sure I have endometriosis. And this OBGYN was like, nope, there's no way. And I was like, wow. Oh, okay. I was like, well, like, I've researched it a little and it seems like my symptoms fit. And I had classic endo symptoms, like classic. Like there was not, and I was not shy about sharing them. Like I will tell the guy at the gas station about my periods if I think that it's going to get me somewhere, like for real. Like
I will might help his wife or girlfriend.
I actually have done that a few times too. I'm not gonna lie. Some poor guy got an earful at a bar one night. And, but his teenage girls, he knows what to look for now because he's got teenage girls. So sorry to that guy if he's listening. So I wasn't ever shy about it, you know, and I kind of go through it with this doctor and I'm like, hey, I really think this is what it is. And he's like, no. Did you have any trouble conceiving your children? And I was like, no, I didn't. I don't think so. Like my daughter was kind of a surprise. Yeah. But no, like it wasn't terrible. I didn't struggle. I didn't have like infertility issues or anything that we had to fight against. And he goes, well, then you don't have it. And so at that time,
does that have to correlate, right?
Right. That was the same for me with Imogene. Yeah. Like they never, because we got pregnant so quick with her, even coming off of birth control, that wasn't even thought about soon because we got pregnant, quote unquote, so quick with her that, well, it couldn't be endo because it affects fertility. Right. It does some. It does. It does a lot. Right. But it also
it may not. Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of, I was like, maybe this isn't. So then, a couple of years later, I had changed OBGYNs. I think I was on my 5th or 6th one at this point. And so I switch OBGYNs again. I talk to him, bring it up again. Like, hey, I'm pretty sure that what I'm dealing with is endometriosis. Like I have all the classic symptoms. And then again, it was, if I remember right, I am pretty sure it was because I didn't have painful sex and I didn't have irregular periods. Like my periods were like to the minute. I was like 8 o'clock on this day. It's starting, like, which is amazing. Unless I was going on vacation. If I was going on vacation,
it's going to wait till vacation.
Start when I go to the airport. But like so. But because of that, and so then again, I'm like, okay, well now I've had 2 doctors tell me that this isn't what this is. So it obviously isn't. I didn't know. I was in a point where at that point in my life, I trusted doctors 100%. Yeah. I mean, there was no reason why I shouldn't. Why would I not trust the doctors?
We have always been taught to trust doctors because they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Here I am, like a 25-year-old college dropout. I'm not going to question you. You went to school for however many, 13 years to get here, plus whatever. No, I'm not. Yeah. You are much more qualified, so you're probably right. And I really, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, oh yeah, I was kind of naive. So
aren't we all though? I mean, I feel the same way. Yeah.
And I bring this up just to shed more light on it, but you dropped out of college because of endo, correct?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I wasn't super committed anyways. But I was miserable. I mean, I was in and out of the health office at CSU, and it was terrible.
Just because, I feel like it does impact so many people and so many people's women's dreams that, they can't fully commit to what they are super passionate about because they don't have the energy, the means, and everything. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up because now you are going back to school. So.
Right. Yes, I am. So, and it's awesome. And it's a lot more fun when you know what you want to do and you're not like struggling to like stay awake in class because you couldn't sleep all night the night before because you were up miserable or whatever. So
did you have a lot of fatigue?
Oh yeah. Okay. And I will say my fatigue is still kind of there. That's kind of one of my lingering symptoms. It definitely improved after I had surgery and everything. But I've always been tired. I'm I've been tired since I was like 13. So,
I know. That's how I felt too. Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, man, I'm really tired. Is this fatigue again? Or is it just because I'm a mom and I'm overloading myself? Like now I'm in that space where I can actually be like, no, I think I'm just tired.
Yeah.
Or, and I don't feel like the fatigue has tied me down. And I definitely have moments of fatigue, I feel like, or maybe slight little bits here and there. But I would say before I couldn't even think clearly to get from point A to point B, let alone take in information and be able to regurgitate that information.
Oh yeah. Cognitively, I feel a lot better. I feel like my brain is like, well, and the other thing too is, over all those years, I self-medicated a lot over those years because, and I thankfully I did have one doctor who was my OB forever, and he was really great. He didn't diagnose my endo, didn't think it was endo, but he did at least believe that I was in pain, and he did offer me pain medication for those years until he retired. And it was kind of when he retired that I was like, crap, I got to start all over again because my new doctors weren't going to hand me Vicodin, which, is understandable, but getting 4 or 5 a month to get through like that day so I can at least like not feel like I'm going to die would be great.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a lot. So I went and I finally found a different doctor. I was like, you know what? I'm trying again. So I went and saw a doctor in Fort Collins. And I walked in, I filled out the paperwork like I always do, like hip pain, back pain, leg pain, arm pain. I pretty much have pain everywhere. Yep. Yeah. The only thing on my body, I always joke, but the only thing on my body that actually works well is my immune system because I don't get sick very often. Yeah. So
that's nice.
Yeah. So, but other than that, like everything else just felt like, especially at this point, this was early 2020 and January of 2020, I went and saw her and she was like, I walked in her office. She like looked through my paperwork, looked at me and she goes, I think you have endometriosis. And I was like, I don't. And she was like, I'm pretty sure you do. And I was like, well, I already had 2 doctors tell me that I didn't have endometriosis. And she's like, well, you had surgery with them? And I was like, no. And she's like, did they do like imaging or anything? No. She's like, they just told you didn't have it. I was like, yeah. And then in retrospect, I'm like, oh yeah, that probably...
Now that I know.
Right? Yeah. Like in retrospect, I learned a lot through this journey for sure. So I talked to her about it and I was like, well, if that's the case, like, can you please just take out my uterus? Like, I've been trying to get somebody to take this toxic thing out of me. Like, I feel like it's killing me. I can't deal with it. I don't want to live like this way. Like, there has to be a solution. And she was like, a hysterectomy is not going to cure endometriosis, so I'm not going to do a hysterectomy.
At least she knew enough to know that, right?
Which I was really glad. At the time, I remember walking out of there and just being devastated. I mean, just like, she's not going to give me the hysterectomy. She wants to put me on Orlissa. I don't want to take this. Like, I don't want to take hormones. I can't take hormones. And it's actually because of my clotting disorder that I found Nancy's Nook. And so I went home from this appointment and I remember just sitting in my garage. I didn't even like go in the house. And I was just sitting in there and just started searching stuff. And I started looking up, blood clots and Orlissa to see if there was a connection there because I was ready to take something again because I was really at the end of my rope. I was in a very, very, very unhealthy, sad, miserable place. And I just needed something.
Right.
So again, like here I am willing to risk blood clots potentially. And so I start digging into it to see what the risk is. And eventually I find Nancy's Nook. on Facebook. And I'm like, what is this place? Holy smokes, my whole life is a lie. Everything that I thought I knew about the female body is like completely inaccurate. And I spent days. I didn't do anything except dig through posts and read, different published studies and read people's experiences and look at doctors.
The current day Erin Brockovich of endometriosis.
I kind of am. Yeah. So I can get I'm a little ADHD, which hopefully I'm keeping in control on this, but I'm one of those, if I'm hyper focused on something, I won't do anything else, and I will learn everything you can learn about it because I want to know everything. So I went through, did, all the research on it. And from there found an excision surgeon here in Colorado, made an appointment with him. I went and saw his nurse practitioner at the time, Caitlin, who I don't know if you guys.
I saw her too. Yeah, she was so great.
I love Caitlin. She's the reason that I really honestly want to be a nurse. One of the many reasons. Because walking into that appointment compared to walking into the other 30 doctors I had seen previously, it was a night and day difference.
Yep.
I mean, I walked in and she's like, yes, you are in the right place. This is not right. The way you are feeling is not normal. There is something wrong, and we will figure out what it is. And I remember before I left, she goes, can we talk about pain management? And I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Wait, what? And she's like, pain management. Can we get you what would be helpful for you to manage your pain until you make your decision on what you want to do for surgery or what, and they give me my options and good informed consent on everything. And I was just blown away. I'm like, you are actually not only going to do surgery for me and potentially help me get a diagnosis, but you're going to help me not suffer through.
Whoa.
Yeah.
She was what a concept.
I'm telling you, she is
so great.
Magical. So, if she ends up ever listening to this, she literally changed my life so much. So I loved seeing her. I left there and I was like, I just felt different. I was like, this is it. I'm going to get my life back. I'm finally going to get the answers that I've been searching for, that I knew something was wrong.
Yep.
And I would just let other people convince me that it wasn't. So I went on with surgery, had surgery October of 2020. I did all of this during COVID.
Yeah, I did
which
too.
It was just like, oh. It was kind of nice though too.
It was. I have to agree. There's parts of it that were really nice.
Yeah. I had an ER trip one night for chest pain, and they thought I might have endo on my diaphragm, but they think it was referred pain. But I started having shortness of breath and I had a high D dimer. And so they sent me to the ER. I was in and out of there in 45 minutes. It was magic. I got a CT. I mean, it was seriously 45 minutes from when I finally got in a room and getting out the door. It was magic. It was awesome.
If there's one good thing to come out of COVID, that's probably one of them.
It was great. So surgery was life-changing. I woke up and I was like, I feel so much better. And they were like, well, that's probably the drugs. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I know. This pain, no matter how many pain medications, no matter what I put on it, my hip pain never goes away. And I was like, I could run a marathon right now. And she's like, please do not run a marathon. I'm like, no, I probably can't. I'm probably a little too drugged to
Although
even
you
get
could
out of
with
the
the
bed.
drugs.
Right. Yeah.
You could feel like you
be a crooked marathon. I'm not sure I would have been running very straight.
I would have fallen over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would have too, but I would have maybe tried it.
Yeah. It was, I will say, the severity of my cramps before so I did have a hysterectomy. I had my left ovary removed, both of my tubes removed. And I had endometriosis, on the outside of my uterus. I had an endometrioma on my left ovary that was giant, that was missed on the 5 transvaginal ultrasounds that I had in the months leading up to my surgery. I mean, they were like, oh, it's a little set. No, it was not. It was the size of a golf ball and black and had taken over my entire ovary. And so it was I had it on my peritoneal was completely stripped out. They completely stripped my peritoneum. Rectum, the space between your uterus and your bladder. I just had it everywhere. And I had it all over my ligaments.
Yeah.
And so they think that's what was causing all of my hip pain. And it was all over it. And as soon as it came off, I haven't limped since.
That was me.
Yeah.
I had, because mine all started with back pain, and there was so much endometriosis on those ligaments between your uterus and your sacrum,
right?
That attached those two together. And that's why they think that mine was also there too, is because of those attachments.
Yeah. Yep. And gone. I mean, I still have a little bit of like residual, like kind of burning pain and stuff here and there, but
I had more nerve pain after.
Yeah, I'd say it's a nervy, it's definitely there still, but it's nothing compared. I mean, before it was visible, you know, I mean, I'd be walking around work and limping and everybody's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
They think maybe I tore my labrum. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's arthritis. Maybe I'm just old. Maybe I just have bad hips. I don't know.
Maybe I have RA.
Right. Yeah. It could be all these things. Well, it wasn't. It was endo.
Yes.
It was endo the whole time.
Yes.
It was endo. Even though I went through physical therapy and went through all these doctors and did all these things, it was never any of the things they said. It was endo the whole time. So surgery, you know, was a dream. I came back from it. I felt amazing. I did have some complications with my surgery post-op. I ended up with a tear in my vaginal cuff, which was terrible, terrible, terrible. But this also kind of goes along. I went into the doctor. I went in, you know, back to see my surgeon for, I think it was my 10-week checkup or 12-week checkup. And I had some like tissue granulation issues and a few little things. And so I had been in there a couple times and I just don't heal well.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just takes me a while to heal. But I'd gone in and talked to them about it. They thought it was a UTI. I got tested for the UTI. I get a call a couple days later. It's not a UTI. And I'm like, wow, this feels so familiar. But it turned out that I did have an infection, but it was on like the interior aspect of my cuff. And so they couldn't see it on a pelvic exam. They couldn't see it on any of those things. So it was terrible. I ended up hospitalized. I had to have emergency surgery to have it fixed. Spent a few days in the hospital on IV antibiotics because the infection had spread. And so it was a complicated recovery for me, definitely. It set me back. So my initial surgery was October of 2020. My second surgery was January of 21, which was great because I had just met my deductible and my out-of-pocket max, and then I met it 30 days into the new year. So perfect. That was really fun. Thankfully, I got a lot done that year after all that because I had the ability to do anything I wanted and not have to pay for it. So it was a year of health after that.
That's how I felt too.
Definitely. Yeah. The silver lining and all that. But so here we are, January 2023. And I was just telling someone the other day, I finally am starting to feel normal. You know, I mean, it's taken me a long time. It's taken a couple years for me to really get in a place where I feel better. So I will say after I had my endometriosis excision and my hysterectomy, I did still have some weird residual pain. My endo belly never went away. Like everybody that gets endo belly where they're bloated and they look pregnant and stuff. I'd had that since I was like a kid. It never went away after my endo surgery. It may have gotten like maybe a touch better, but I did end up finding that I had vascular issues as well. And so that kind of complicated things. It's not super common, but I think it's probably similar to endometriosis where it's overlooked a lot.
Yep.
But I have basically a lot of like reflux in the veins in my pelvis. So I was treated for that, and that changed a lot of things too. So, you know, for me, I had a few battles to get through. I had to get through and they were very similar symptom wise, you know, but I had to get through the endometriosis, get through the surgeries for that, the complications, you know, and then heal from that. And then I went and pursued the other thing. And I knew something else was wrong. And I was pretty sure it wasn't endo because I'm very confident in my surgeon's ability. It still could be, maybe.
I mean, it always can be, right? Like that's just
it's not perfection.
No, and it also starts at a microscopic cell, which they may not always catch. And if your body's in a flare-up and it's going to produce its own estrogen, right? That's what we've learned. It could. Absolutely. And that could happen with any excision specialist, and does happen. Because our bodies are so complex.
They are.
And endo is so complex.
So part of my schooling this year, one of the things that I was able to participate in was a human cadaver dissection lab.
Oh yeah. You're going back for nursing to clarify.
Yes. Yeah. So through this whole experience, it has taught me that there's some pretty big holes in our healthcare system, and there are a lot of women that are falling through the cracks, and I might just be one nurse, but I'm hoping one nurse eventually. Right. But I'm hoping that I can use that to help other people and not have them go through 22 years of chaos and of missed opportunities. And so that's what I'm hoping for. But with this cadaver lab, It's amazing. Like looking into the pelvis of a human, it's like,
it's so cool.
First off, everything's crammed in there. Like when you think about, I don't know if it was just me, but like anytime I think about the body, like I think about the organs, like having this nice little space,
like the little mannequin that you can like take the organs in and out of.
Yeah.
And they have
not
space
at all. Everything is like smashed in there. And there's a lot. I mean, you have so many nerves and blood vessels and muscles and, connective tissues in there, on top of all the dysfunctional organs going on.
Right.
And, I mean, it really, there's a lot that can be generators of pelvic pain. And I think it's important, to address the endo. And then if you still have issues, to keep fighting, because that's what I had to do. And now I will say my life is awesome. Yeah. I still have a few little things here and there, and I'm still battling some stuff
a little bit too.
Right. And but it's a journey. And I know that if it becomes unmanageable, I know what to do now. Right. I know who to go to. I know what I want to do. I know, I know exactly what to do now. And I know how to advocate for myself now. That's awesome. Where before oh yes, sir. Absolutely. Like I'll do whatever you tell me to, because you're the smart one and I'm the college dropout. So yeah.
But you're not a college dropout because you're not smart. You're a college dropout because the diagnosis was missed and because you were living in such excruciating pain and fatigue and everything else. So I think that is a lesson in and of itself, is that if you're dealing with this, you're not dumb. You're not crazy. You're not anything else other than someone who is suffering. And we need to acknowledge the fact that people are hurting our mental state as well by pushing those things on us.
Right. Yeah.
And we're just trying to survive.
We're just trying to survive and not feel like we're in labor every month.
Right.
So yeah,
exactly.
Yep, exactly.
Chelsea, thank you so much for coming and telling your story. And we're going to have Chelsea back a lot more because she's a wealth of knowledge and I feel like she's fun. And I like having her here too.
Well, thank you. I like hanging out with you guys. You're my new tribe, and I love having you guys in my life. So thank you.
And we're excited because we do get to. We haven't said a whole lot, but we are going to the endometriosis summit in Florida, all three of us together. So we'll be able to kind of digest that a little bit together as the weeks go on. So thank you for telling your story and being in a space of advocacy for those who have been ignored so many times.
Absolutely. Yes. No, and thank you guys for creating this platform for people like me to come in and share our experience. It's healing for me to be able to kind of talk about it and be like, hey, this is terrible, but I made it through. And it's good for other people to hear that you can fight. If you have the UTIs and the IBS and the drama and everything comes back normal, trust yourself.
Yep.
So thank you guys for giving me this opportunity. I love you. And I'm so happy that I got to come today.
Yes, thank you. And until next time, continue advocating for those you love and for yourself.